I entered an abandoned hospital and something still lived there. It was late afternoon when I finally decided to go. St. Maro Hospital had been abandoned for decades, a hulking structure of cracked concrete, rusted metal, and broken glass. The place had a reputation, of course. Rumors of strange deaths, vanished patients, and whispers of something alive inside. I didn't believe in ghosts or monsters, but curiosity has a way of pushing you into places you know you shouldn't go. The sky was gray, clouds thick and heavy, blotting out what little sunlight remained. The wind swept through the empty parking lot, carrying the faint, clinging smell of decay and old antiseptic. The hospital gates were rusted through, swinging loosely as I pushed them open. Gravel crunched under my boots. Broken glass glittered faintly in the dim light, scattered like tiny stars across the asphalt. I paused at the front doors. They were massive, the kind that used to close automatically, but now hung crooked on their hinges. Taking a deep breath, I pushed one open. The door groaned loudly, echoing through the empty lot, and a gust of cold air hit me as I stepped inside. Dust floated in the air, catching the weak light from the cloudy sky outside. The lobby was enormous. High ceilings disappeared into darkness above, beams of light cutting through broken windows like jagged fingers. Rusted wheelchairs leaned against walls, their wheels frozen in place. Peeling paint hung from the walls in long strips. The floor was cracked and littered with debris, old newspapers, patient records, and bits of broken glass. The air smelled like mold and something sharper, metallic, that made my stomach twist. I moved cautiously, my flashlight sweeping the room. The silence was suffocating. It wasn't just quiet. It was the kind of silence that presses against your ears, makes your heartbeat sound deafening. And then I heard it. A faint whisper, so soft I could barely make it out. "Hello," I froze. My light scanned the lobby frantically. Empty. The sound seemed to echo from everywhere and nowhere at once. My rational mind told me it was the wind, or maybe the building settling. But a chill ran down my spine. I wasn't alone. Stepping forward, I noticed old patient charts scattered across a counter. Some were yellowed, others still crisp, filled with dates, names, and notes that made no sense. One caught my eye, an old patient who supposedly disappeared decades ago. Their photograph stared up at me, faded but still haunting. I moved into the first hallway. It stretched further than I expected, shadows pooling in the corners. Doors hung off hinges, some missing entirely. Inside the rooms were remnants of the past, rusted beds, shredded sheets, and furniture rotting into the floor. Every step I took echoed, bouncing down the hall in strange, uneven rhythms. And then came the first sound that made me doubt my own mind, a soft metallic clink. Something shifted in the shadows. I swung my flashlight around. Empty. My heart began to race. The shadows seemed to stretch and twist just out of the corner of my eye, vanishing whenever I tried to focus on them. I told myself to keep moving. Curiosity outweighed fear for now. I had to know what was inside. The corridors seemed to go on forever, longer than they should have been, turning corners that didn't match the floor plan I remembered from old hospital maps. Every step made the hair on the back of my neck stand on end. And then I heard it again. A whisper, closer this time, almost directly behind me. I froze, barely breathing. "Hello," It wasn't just the wind. It wasn't just my imagination. Something was here, in this abandoned hospital. Something alive. I tightened my grip on my flashlight and forced myself to take another step. That step was the first in what would become the longest night of my life. The hallway seemed to stretch endlessly as I moved deeper. The air grew colder, thicker, and more oppressive with every step. My flashlight's beam cut through the darkness, but barely reached the far corners, where shadows pooled like black water. The silence was heavier here, almost tangible, pressing against my chest. I passed a room with a door hanging completely off its hinges. Inside, an old gurney lay rusted and overturned. Medical instruments were scattered across the floor, some coated in thick dust, others still glinting faintly as if someone had left them moments ago. I shivered. Something about the arrangement felt deliberate, like the room had been staged or watched. The whispers returned, faint at first, almost like the wind through broken windows, but unmistakable. They weren't words I could make out yet, just soft, sibilant sounds that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. My pulse thudded painfully in my ears. A sudden metallic clatter echoed from further down the hall. I swung my flashlight toward it. Nothing. My breathing grew rapid. I told myself it was a fallen pipe or loose metal, but every instinct screamed that I was being watched. I quickened my pace, moving toward the main corridor that led to the upper wards. The walls here were scarred. Scratches, deep and dark, ran in chaotic patterns. Some looked like they had been carved recently. Others were faded and brittle with age. A lingering smell of blood, faint but unmistakable, made me gag. My flashlight flickered as I passed. I pounded it gently with my hand, willing it to stay steady. Then I saw it. A shadow, taller than any man should be, slipping across the end of the hallway. It moved unnaturally fast, bending in ways a human body shouldn't. My heart froze. I raised the flashlight, but when its beam landed on the spot, the shadow was gone. The only thing left was the dark, empty corridor and the oppressive silence. I told myself I was imagining things. Maybe it was the stress, the rumors, the darkness. But I knew that wasn't the case. Something was here, and it was aware of me. I pressed onward, forcing myself to keep moving. Each step echoed through the halls, every sound magnified, every shadow seeming to twitch just at the edge of my vision. I tried to focus on the patient charts scattered on the floor, reading names and dates to distract myself, but my eyes kept drifting to the darkness beyond. And then I heard the whisper again, clear this time, close. Over here, it wasn't soft anymore. It carried a weight, a demand. My stomach turned. I spun around, swinging the flashlight wildly, but again, nothing. The hallway was empty. Panic started to edge into my mind. The building felt alive now, corridors twisting in impossible ways. A room I passed a moment ago suddenly appeared down the hall, doors I hadn't noticed before leading to darkness I didn't dare enter. I could feel it tracking me, something patient, waiting, and I realized, whatever this was, it didn't just want to scare me. It wanted me to stay. I swallowed hard, gripping my flashlight like a lifeline, and continued down the hall. Every shadow, every whisper, every flicker of light reminded me that I wasn't alone. And with every step, the hospital seemed to grow darker, older, hungrier. The deeper I went, the more the hospital seemed to warp around me. Hallways stretched farther than they should. Doors appeared where there had been none, and shadows pulled in corners as if watching, waiting. My flashlight trembled in my hand, but I couldn't stop. I had to know what was inside. I entered a ward on the upper floor. The windows were cracked, letting in streaks of pale, gray light. Beds lined the walls, some overturned, others with shredded sheets stained with long-forgotten blood. Patient records littered the floor, names faded, dates long past. A low hum seemed to vibrate through the floorboards beneath me. I froze. Then I saw movement. At the far end of the hallway, a shadow flickered. Tall, impossibly thin, with limbs bending at unnatural angles. My flashlight caught it for a brief second, glowing eyes staring directly at me before the figure vanished into the darkness. I stumbled back, heart pounding, almost dropping my light. I told myself it was a trick of the shadows, fatigue, imagination, but deep down, I knew better. Something was here, and it was watching me. Every instinct screamed to run, but I pressed on, trying to keep my fear under control. I moved down a narrow corridor lined with rusted lockers and old equipment. A whisper followed me, soft and sibilant at first, then growing louder, closer. I spun around, swinging the flashlight wildly, but the hallway was empty. Only the lingering shadow of the figure remained, stretching along the walls like ink. The air felt thick, suffocating, pressing against my chest. I could hear my own breathing, rapid and uneven, echoing off the walls. I tried to ignore it, moving faster now, but the hospital seemed to respond. Doors that had been closed were now ajar. Rooms I had passed were open, revealing darkness so deep it felt like a pit. The whispers grew, overlapping, a chorus of voices that didn't belong. Then, something scraped the wall beside me, a long, deliberate sound, like nails dragging along metal. I froze, stomach twisting. My flashlight swung toward the sound, and I caught a brief glimpse again. The creature, just on the edge of light, its glowing eyes fixed on me. It moved impossibly fast, almost gliding along the floor, disappearing before I could fully see it. I ran. Footsteps echoed behind me, but they weren't mine. Heavy, uneven, impossible. I turned corners, ducked through rooms, the hospital twisting unnaturally, hallways looping in ways that made no sense. I felt its presence everywhere, just out of sight, patient and relentless. I finally burst into a larger room, the old operating theater. Broken tiles littered the floor, rusted tables stood like tombstones, and the air reeked of iron and decay. I tried to catch my breath, my heart pounding, and then I realized the creature wasn't just in the shadows. It was moving toward me. I could see it now, fully, if only for a heartbeat. Tall, grotesque, limbs bending unnaturally, glowing eyes, its body moving in ways no human body could. And then, just as quickly, it vanished again, leaving only the echo of my own terrified breathing. I knew one thing for certain. This hospital wasn't abandoned. Something alive, something patient, was hunting me, and it wasn't going to let me leave. I didn't stop running. My flashlight bounced wildly, casting jagged shadows across the walls as I sprinted down twisting corridors that seemed to have no end. The hospital had changed. Hallways I'd passed before now looped back on themselves. Doors led to rooms I hadn't seen, and every turn felt like the building itself was shifting to keep me inside. Behind me, I heard it. Heavy, uneven footsteps. Not quite human, but too deliberate to be the building settling. The whispers returned, closer, overlapping, laughing, hissing, calling my name. Run, don't stop. I rounded a corner into a long, narrow hallway. Rusted wheelchairs were tipped over, metal scraping against tiles as I darted past. The air felt thicker here, almost suffocating, carrying the smell of mold and something metallic that burned my nose. My flashlight flickered. I pounded it with my free hand, willing it to stay steady. Then I saw it again. A silhouette at the end of the hall, impossibly tall, limbs bending at grotesque angles. Its glowing eyes locked onto mine. It moved faster than any human should be able to move, sliding along the floor and walls with unnatural grace. Panic gripped me. I ran faster, tripping over broken tiles, barely catching myself as I slammed into a wall. The building seemed to respond. Doors slammed shut behind me. The ceiling above groaned, and the shadows stretched, twisting into shapes that weren't human. Every instinct screamed at me to escape, but every hallway seemed to loop back, bringing me face to face with rooms I'd already passed. I turned into what looked like the surgical wing, hoping for a stairwell or exit. Rusted tables and old medical equipment littered the floor. The air here was thick with the scent of decay and iron, making my stomach turn. And then I heard it. Right behind me, scraping along the walls, faster now, deliberate. I spun, shining my flashlight toward the sound. Empty, but I could feel it. The presence of something patient, waiting, hunting me. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might burst. I tried doors, stairwells, anything that might lead outside, but the building seemed endless. And then I realized the worst part. I wasn't just being chased. The hospital itself had become part of it. Hallways shifted as I moved. Doors that were open now closed, walls stretching farther than possible. It was alive, or something inside it was controlling it. And whatever it was, it didn't want me to leave. I rounded another corner and froze. A doorway ahead revealed the shadow again, standing perfectly still in the middle of the hall, glowing eyes fixed on me. My flashlight flickered, and in that instant, it vanished. But I knew it hadn't gone far. I forced myself to keep moving, breath ragged, legs burning. Every step echoed too loudly. Every shadow seemed to twitch and shift just at the edge of vision. The hospital wasn't just haunted, it was hunting. And I was the prey. I reached what looked like the old operating theater. Broken tiles littered the floor, rusted tables stood like tombstones, and the air reeked of iron and decay. My flashlight flickered, struggling to cut through the oppressive darkness. Every instinct screamed at me to turn back, but I had no choice. I had to face whatever had been stalking me. And then I saw it. The creature emerged from the shadows, fully visible this time. It was taller than any man, limbs twisted and bent at impossible angles. Its glowing eyes pierced the darkness, reflecting every ounce of fear in me. Its movements were fluid and unnatural, gliding across the floor with a speed and grace that made my head spin. I stumbled backward, tripping over a rusted table. My flashlight rolled across the floor, flickering wildly. The creature paused for just a moment, its gaze fixed on me, and I swear it smiled. though it had no face, only shadows that warped and twisted. I scrambled to my feet and bolted for the nearest exit, my lungs burning. The hospital groaned around me, walls shifting slightly, hallways looping back in impossible ways. I could hear it behind me, faster than ever, its footsteps echoing with a rhythm that matched my heartbeat. I burst through a door into a stairwell, descending as fast as I could. The air grew colder, and the whispers followed, overlapping, calling my name, mocking me. I finally reached the ground floor, pushing open a side exit. Moonlight spilled across the cracked asphalt, and for a moment, I thought I had escaped. But then I heard it. A whisper carried on the wind, soft but unmistakable. "I'm still here." I didn't look back. I ran until the hospital disappeared from view, swallowed by the night and mist. My lungs burned, my legs ached, and my heart felt like it would explode, but I kept going. I didn't stop until I reached my bike, throwing myself onto it and pedaling as fast as I could. I never went back. I've never been able to shake the feeling that something inside that hospital remembers me, waits for me, and watches from the shadows. Sometimes, at night, I think I hear faint whispers in the wind, just like that first hello. The hospital isn't just abandoned. It's alive, and whatever lives there is patient, waiting. I should have never gone inside.